Hassane Mezine, to the Radical Futures podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Hello.
Hello. So, you know that we are honoring the work of our favorite revolutionary writer, thinker, psychiatrist, Frantz Fanon, all this month. He would have been 100 years old this July, and he died too soon. And the reason you are here, because I believe you have made one of the finest, most detailed, most nuanced documentary films about Frantz Fanon. It's called Fanon, hier, aujourd'hui, Fanon, yesterday, tomorrow.
Today.
And I just was hoping to discuss and unpack Fanon today, the radical afterlives, his past, and things that are happening, of course, in France. There is a kind of a revival, and also the fact that there are a bunch of new films that is changing how we are talking, reading about Fanon. And then the thing that I know weighs on you and weighs on me, and we're thinking about this all the time, is the devastation of Palestine, and the words of Fanon within that, how close we are holding Fanon these days because of what's happening in Palestine as well. And in general, just to introduce you to those who don't know your work, we will include the link, of course, to your documentary. But for those who don't know you, you are a documentary filmmaker, but you're also a photographer, I believe, and quite engaged within photography. And you are a Parisian, in my opinion, and French, but you come by way of Algeria and are very connected to Algerian world, Algerian society, and could probably tell us quite a bit about that as well. Is that an accurate introduction?
Yes and no. So I agree to say that, yeah, I'm a photographer and a film director also. And I'm also teaching photography. So I'm working
Lovely.
I have my own training center here in Paris now.
Hmm.
And yeah, in matter of identity, I like to qualify myself as an Algerian French citizen.
Hmm.
So I think it's very important to me because I think if my parents were colonized by Spain or Italy, I would be an Algerian in any case. So that was the matter of the colonizer that has given me a second identity.
Absolutely.
So saying that I'm Algerian to me is very important. It's my
Okay.
roots.
Okay. Very good.
Mm.
In the Anglophone world, in UK, US, Canada, whatever, there is a lot of hyphenated identities, French, Algerian, British Indian, all that. And I know that it's not as common maybe in the Francophone universe. So it's good to know Algerian first, and then everything else comes after. So I wanted to start, of course, with Fanon. I wanted to focus very much on this documentary and your views on Fanon today. So maybe we can start from the very beginning, and please just speak as long as you wish. How did you first come across Fanon, and what happened? And is there a good story?
I think Fanon arrived in my life. I don't remember exactly, I was 18 or 19, but it arrived at a proper moment because that was a kind of logical moment to me. Because before that, growing up in an Algerian family where the question of the war of liberation was all the
Mm.
time, you know, it was in the family with all the taboo around this also. So I had to do some research by myself, and there were talks about parents and families mentioning all the time the war of liberation. But there are a lot of things I had to look up by myself. At the same time, I think I grew up listening with my brothers and sisters, my elder brother, listening to a lot of reggae music. And to me, reggae music was very important because it was part of my, I would say, political education.
Mhm.
And I'm mentioning this because, for example, listening to reggae music was something that have linked very much with watching the series on television Roots. by Alex Haley
Yeah.
television when I was a kid. And I
Okay.
think that was to me a turning point in my life. As a kid, I've discovered that violence through slavery, and there was a link that was made with was things that were mentioned about Algerian history.
Mm.
And through reggae music, I found something very much in common with that, and gave me also an interest in English language too.
Hmm.
And when I've discovered Fanon and I've read the first time Black Skin, White Mask, even if it was a bit of a difficult reading because it was very
Very.
technical, I found that there was a lot of words that were put on some situations.
Hmm.
And so that was my first encounter with Fanon. But
Yeah.
I need to say that I had another encounter with Fanon, which is about, I would say, around 20 years later.
Oh.
After reading it for the first time, when I read Fanon for the second time, around 20 years later, it was much more clear in my mind that Fanon was giving a lot of keys. And maybe with the experience I have acquired in life, and also as an activist, to put some words on situations in a more, I said, practical way.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so Fanon was. It was a kind of catalyst of all different situations I've came across and different topics. And
Hmm.
through Fanon, I could think about the actual Algerian situation, like I could think of Palestine, I could think of what was happening in Congo, I could think what was happening in Haiti and in other places.
Yeah.
And there was something in common all the time. That was the question of colonialism and post-colonialism.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, there is no post, as we are discovering. The post never comes, right?
Yes, but I mean what we
Yes,
call
I know.
post-colonialism, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, technically speaking. And I think I would add to that kind of all the thinking around decolonization,
Mhm.
or the
Exactly.
lack of decolonization, or the hoping for decolonization, working towards all of that. Okay. That's really, really super interesting, and all these kind of different connections. And because you schooled in France, I just wanted to get a sense if Fanon is read or studied. Is it mandatory reading at some point in university? What is how does France engage with Fanon?
I wish he was studied in France.
He's not at all.
Unfortunately, it's not at all, I would say. It is sometimes, but which is more kind of personal initiative for some teachers that
Yeah.
find an interest in Fanon.
Hmm.
Otherwise, Fanon is totally skipped from the Ministry of Education, programs,
Mm.
because I think that today's France is not ready to have Fanon being studied. So, of course, today uh, I think it's much more easier for the French government to have people like Aimé Césaire being
Mm.
studied in schools, even officially, to have some of his poems or some writings of him. But Fanon is still very, as we say in French, is still like a burning potato. That's how we say in French, une patate chaude. Because when you get it in your hands, you don't know what to do with it.
But how come Césaire can be a burning potato too?
Yes, of course. But in the official discourse in France, we tend to sometimes to oppose Fanon with Césaire the same way, for example, in the US, when we talk about the radicality of Malcolm X and someone
And
like Martin Luther King, that would be the peaceful guy. And we try to oppose them as if the final aim of their struggle wasn't the same, you know
mm,
and we try to show every time we need to show the fact that yeah, the peaceful guy is much more interesting. Let's go this way rather than the radical violent. It's not a solution, and of course using all the cliche about what is being said about Fanon, for example, like it is about Malcolm X. So
mm,
in France, I think today we start now to have a few, for example, a few cities that will allow to give the name of a street or building or a library to of the name of Frantz Fanon, but very often it's like a left town hall.
Ah,
Very
okay.
often it's like a communist having a kind of a bit decolonial,
Yeah.
orientation, political orientation that will allow to do that. It will be a scandal because you will have people complaining. We have the
Mhm.
example that I've mentioned many times about the city of Bordeaux about
Mm.
almost 10 years ago, where the city council decided to name a street of Frantz Fanon. And it was validated by the municipality, and everybody was okay. And within 24 hours, I think, or 48 hours, there was like a petition online saying, how can you name a street with the name of a terrorist from the Algerian Liberation Front?
Oh my
and,
God.
uh, and so there was a junction of former French, people being nostalgic of the Algerian, French Algeria,
Yes.
colonial Algeria, and also in the city of Bordeaux, that has also the history of slavery, which is a
Mhm.
city that has most of its richness is not coming from wine, is
Yeah.
coming from the slave trade.
Mm.
So there was a kind of combination of those two, groups that made such a pressure that the mayor of the time, Alain Juppé, just went backward and he cancelled the project.
My God.
So it shows how Fanon is still today is still a hot potato, as I said.
Yeah,
In
totally
the
a hot
hands of-
potato. And, in a way, it's a great thing. And in
yeah.
another way, it's ridiculous because we deprive future generation and youth of the sort of thinking, of
Hmm.
his words. And as a professor, as an academic, I know how important it is when you have those few students to force some people to read something. So
But
it's terrible that there isn't a mandatory push. But what's weird, of course, and not weird, predictable, but depressing, is that Fanon was a brilliant psychiatrist and a scholar and a thinker on race and so many other things, but we always come down to this notion of violence. This, and I have written about it, I think you and I have spoken about it in the past. People have written and rewritten and rethought this notion that Fanon is calling for an eruption of violence, that he's saying just go out, go crazy, get violent, and it's a sort of not misunderstood idea, but it's kind of misplaced, the way in which it's decontextualized, it's taken outside of its context, and constantly travels, and all his other ideas within the mainstream remain dormant except for this one thing. How do you engage with Fanon's notion of violence? What would you say to somebody, if they say, oh, come on, why do you want to make a documentary on Fanon, Hassan? This is a violent guy, he's asking everyone to be violent. How would you defend this?
yeah, just before that, I'd like to say about what we were just talking about is the fact that if Fanon is so difficult to talk about Fanon, and we use all the time that idea of violence, it's because France is not ready yet to talk about his past, present colonial attitude,
Yeah.
and talking about accepting the fact that the past was very violent during the colonial era, accepting it and recognizing it, it would it would mean to accept to say that today we're still in a colonial era because of French today's attitude towards his former colonies, and
Sure.
and the way it's still treating even its citizens coming from the former colonies living in France and having this time the citizenship, you know and it is too complicated for a system that is still functioning, has still the mechanism of colonialism today towards his overseas. When we talk about the French Caribbean, when we talk about its own black and Arab and Muslim communities in France, the way it is treating them, it would be to accept that it's still doing it by recognizing the past, because it would give too much evidence of what has been done. So
Absolutely.
the solution is to just say, oh no, no, nothing happened, and no, it's not that way, or it's too complex to talk about. The same way when we talk about Palestine, to avoid the things, say, oh, it's too complex, too
Absolutely.
complicated to talk about this, you know. So to answer your question about the question of violence, I think it's as simple as this. The essence of colonialism is violence. And what Fanon tells us, Fanon is talking about love. And the path toward love in a very violent system is to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And when we talk about Fanon's violence, the notion of violence talking about that Fanon talks about, it's just talking about self-defense and nothing else. This is
Yeah.
not a reactionary attitude.
Well, he's
That,
talking about the importance of armed resistance as well.
of course, but armed
Yeah.
resistance is with
Yeah.
violent
Same
people to be
defense.
self-defense is a way to be respected, because if you don't defend yourself, you're not being respected. And we
Yeah.
see it today. I'm just giving an example. Today the whole world is respecting Iran today, nowadays, because
Yes.
Iran is respecting itself and is using a self-defense attitude. And
Absolutely.
today I would say, with a lot of shame, most of
Mhm.
the Arab regimes today, they feel so frustrated not being able to have an attitude of dignity like Iran is having today. And we
Absolutely.
know that in all the situation today, the people in all the Arab countries, we know that there is division that has been tried for many years between Shia people and Sunni people. But still today, in Arab population, the people are very proud about what Iran's been doing, the same way that people were happy and proud about Hassan Nasrallah in 2006
Yeah.
when they smacked Israel also. So,
Mhm.
and it's a matter of defending yourself and having dignity. And Fanon is just talking about this. He's talking about dignity and the
Mhm.
path toward living peacefully together without any hate and without any supremacism.
Mhm.
And this is
Absolutely.
just a word of love.
Yeah.
So
I love
that's
that.
what I would say about Fanon when someone is mentioning the notion of violence.
Yeah. Fanon is a revolutionary for love, not violence.
Yes,
I
of
like that.
course. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And yeah, some of what you're saying reminds me of a very powerful book I read recently by Mohammed El Kurd, who's a very young Palestinian writer who came of age basically because he was portrayed in a documentary as a 12-year-old in during the Sheikh Jarrah, when they were demolishing and all this kind of stuff and
Mhm.
occupying. But anyway, he has a book and it's called Perfect Victims, and you don't even have to really open the book to know what he's saying, because all the world wants is for Palestinians to just lie down and accept the violence, just bear it. Perfect victims, that's all they can ever be. And it's almost like there is an overturning of the notion of dignity for the colonizer. The colonizers, like, you only have dignity in dying. But
Mhm.
actually they are dehumanizing and humiliating. And as you say, rising out of that, defending yourself with arms is the only way to find something human. I completely agree with you there.
Mhm.
um but yeah, I think we've also recently had works by writers, and every couple of years somebody writes a book about Fanon, and then they take a different approach to the violence. They try to sanitize it, they do something with it, and it's really quite frustrating. So let's talk about your film. Why? So you read Fanon first when you were about 18, 19, complicated stuff. Then you came back to it 20 years later. So you've had these sort of phases. You're connecting it to roots and stuff like that, reggae music. I love it. How did you decide you're going to make a documentary?
Uh,
It's a big decision. You were not heavily funded or anything like that. I know that.
yes. So actually, the idea of doing a documentary on Fanon was something I had in mind for a few years before I started. I had the idea, but it was like maybe a fantasy, or I didn't
Yeah.
know as a photographer if I was ready to make a movie.
Mhm.
So I was actually before that. I just need to mention that as an activist for many years, I've been following, the social movement, especially in France, a bit around Europe also. I was part of the movement of the Indigènes de la République,
Mhm.
which is a political decolonial movement that started in 2005 in
Wow.
France.
Mhm.
And I was mainly dealing with what I could do the best. It was to take pictures. So I was following the movement, taking pictures. We had a newspaper. So we were, trying to search for topics, doing interviews, trying to, of course, to deal with the website and all those stuff. So I was mainly dealing with the image, taking pictures, and it came to my mind that Fanon was someone that was important, and there was something I wanted to do about him.
Mhm.
And I had the opportunity one day through the Frantz Fanon Foundation. There was that friend Omar Bandera
Okay.
that was the I would say the political spine of this foundation. He's the one that was mainly thinking about the political thing in the foundation and yeah, the political spine. And one day we had a discussion, and I was talking about this idea, and he told me, yeah, but he said, I think I have one or two interviews about people I've interviewed about Fanon. And he said, I just interviewed them and I have the footage. And he said, I don't know what to do with that. If you want, I just give them to you and just do whatever you want to do with that.
Mhm.
And so when I was given the things, those footage actually, I just looked at them and I started thinking what I could do about it.
Mhm.
And so I started doing, I thought of doing a biography of Fanon through people that knew him.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So that's how it all started. So I had those footage and started looking at that, and then started looking at who I could interview to complete the work. And so I started looking and doing some interviews. And I made a small movie that was like around, I think, 25 minutes that I showed once in a conference in Paris.
Mhm.
And people really enjoyed it and told me, oh, if you have more footage, maybe you should carry on and do something bigger because this is very interesting. And I said, okay. And I started thinking, yeah, I should do a film bigger.
Yeah.
So I started working on it and having some other interviews and looking at all the different interviews I made. But something went wrong. I didn't know where to go. And I was looking at the movie and adding stuff, trying to do some editing. And I don't know, I was not motivated the same way I was as I was doing it for the first time when I started working. And I didn't know why.
Mm.
And
Wow.
after a moment, talking with my partner, actually, with whom we shared a lot about the movie, Nadia, and we're talking, and we just looked at each other, and it came like something like very evident, and we say, why don't we bring Fanon in the present?
Mm.
And then just realized that the interest we had in Fanon was about what Fanon was bringing us in today's struggle and how ourselves were being motivated about Fanon thought because it was giving us keys on today's issues.
Yeah.
And then we started thinking about, oh, let's make a movie and then making a link between the past and the present. And then it's a whole new adventure that started. So we
Yeah.
started looking at different people that would be interesting to interview in today's struggle, coming from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this is how I started launching a crowdfunding
Yeah.
to get a bit of money to be able to carry on the movie and to travel and to pay someone to do the editing and all the stuff.
Yeah.
And this is how it went
Yeah.
afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. And I know by mistake, and maybe it says my mind. I said I called your film Fanon yesterday, tomorrow, but yeah, it's hier aujourd'hui, yesterday and today, absolutely. And then in my mind, it kind of speaks into the future, and it's a very neat structure actually of yesterday and then the now of Fanon. And I believe the film was released in 2018, and it has traveled everywhere. First, you traveled everywhere for the film, and there is a beautiful interview with a man in Niamey in Niger, I think. And I just love that guy, and I just can't believe you you found him. It's just amazing to think of the reach and the local and the global. And I know this is a cliche, the local and the global, but it actually makes evident this the way in which these ideas have traveled and moved, and you synthesize them quite beautifully. And I do want to emphasize, you make it seem like, oh, I did crowdfunding and then this happened and that happened, but you and I have spoken many times, and it was a very guerrilla, very radical approach to the financing too. You're using miles, you're using your friends' miles to travel, to go places, and I absolutely love this type of intense commitment, to finish the film. So it's so hard to make these things move, actually. So I love that about I love how you made it as much as I love the film itself, actually. And I wanted to ask about all your travel. So you traveled during to interview people, and then later too, I think you traveled quite a bit to distribute the film, to
Mhm.
have screenings and things like that. And what was some of the more memorable places where you were shocked? You went in perhaps thinking, oh, I think it's going to be like that, and then you were surprised, or
Yeah, actually, there was kind of different adventures, I would say, that were, I mean, kind of pleasant because of surprises, but different. So
yeah,
I don't know if there is one that is more
sure, say
than
more, say
others,
all.
but I think one that comes to my mind is in Niger.
Okay,
When I
good.
went the second time to interview my friend Ibrahim Diori, that is a lawyer in, what the place where we have the Frantz Fanon, Espace Frantz
Foundation.
Fanon
Oh yeah.
in Niamey. And I had the opportunity to go there. The first time I went there was to interview Ousmane Nangaladima, that old man that
Right.
was a resistant part of the Sawaba movement in Niger. And I went there. I've met a structure with activists, and I spent some time with them. And it was funny because actually they had a lot of cameras and microphone and stuff like that. And I was told that people can't use them really because they don't know how to use them.
Hmm.
So what I did at the moment, I just looked at my schedule and I said, "Oh, I have a few days left." And I went to the travel agent and I changed my tickets and I've extended for a week. And we organized like about 6 or 7 trainings on photography, on different, softwares and filming. And there was such a motivation of the youth to learn how to use the cameras. And I stayed there for like an extra week, and that was fantastic. And
Mm.
the following year, they have a project on doing. There was a TV series they were doing in Hausa language, and
Ah.
they were looking for a director of photography, and they called me and they said, "Oh, can you come and work with us?" And they invited me, and I just went there like that. And finally, the project lasted for 3 months, and that was a fantastic experience. So I knew the team, and I was like family with everyone,
Hmm.
and which was a fantastic experience.
Hmm.
And when I went back the third time for the interview of Ibrahim Diori,
Hmm.
all right there, and so I had like someone coming for the sound, helping me, and that was the best condition I had during the whole filming of my documentary. I had someone helping me to record with the microphone. I had all the lights and everything. So we made a fantastic setup. Everything was great.
Hmm.
And we just started the interview, and Ibrahim Diori was brilliant. I love this analysis about the situation in West Africa and in the neo-colonial system of the what we call
Mm.
France Afrique. And we just started about 5 minutes, and what happened? We had like a power cut.
Hmm.
Electricity went off,
Hey.
and
Hmm.
it was fantastic because the thing we started laughing, and what happened is that Ibrahim carried on talking. He didn't care about the light that went off and was like panicking, trying to find the right setup to get the light back, you know. Uh, and he actually carried on talking. And what
Okay.
was interesting is that we were talking about the France Afrique, and Niger is the country that brings all the uranium to France
Yeah.
since 1960, and is a country that still faces a lot of electrical, you know, power cut today due to the France Afrique, you know, and
Wow.
that was great to have
Yeah.
this moment, you know. And after we finished the interview, we just had such a great laugh about the whole situation. And when I
Yeah.
looked at the interview, I was so happy about what Ibrahim said, and that was so, yeah,
Yeah, wow, that's wonderful. And then I met you for the first time when you screened the film in the US,
yeah.
and I know it circulated quite well within the academic sphere. And what did you think of the American or the English language interest in Fanon, or like, or your experience of universities in the US? Like right now, of course, we're living at a time where their corruption and their moral depravity has really been exposed. But you know, how you probably met the more interesting people. You know what I mean? Like you probably met the ones that cared about these ideas. I just wanted to know what your experience of US and US universities where Fanon is. There's a lot of focus on Fanon.
Yes, actually, the US universities were a very interesting, experience for me because how can I put it? Myself, I've never been to. I've been to university, but just less than a year, I would say. So I don't have that experience of the academic world.
Yeah.
And I've discovered it first in the US before discovering it in other places. And
Hmm.
it was for me like mythical places to go to universities, and especially in the US, in some prestigious university. And I had some very interesting encounter with students. But to be honest, I think the most interesting students I've met and with whom I shared the best experiences, they were not Americans. They were
They were
people
just
coming
in
from
America.
studying in America and having more like I said a worldwide experience, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not saying that like classical white Americans were not interesting, but it was more like a theoretical, you know, approach of
Hmm.
funnel, of just reading and understanding situation in theory. I'm
Hmm.
saying that because I'll give another example to this. I had once we screened a movie in Palestine in a university
West
in
Bank.
university in the West Bank in Bethlehem.
Birzat, maybe.
No, that was in
Bethlehem.
University of Bethlehem.
Hmm.
And when it comes to have the Q&A, you know, I had some students just coming close to the camera and saying, "Oh, Hassan, thank you very much for this movie, but we're sorry we cannot stay for the Q&A because of the checkpoints. We need to go home now, otherwise we're gonna get stuck." You know, and
God.
just this, you know, brings you in a much more like I would say the praxis of actual colonialism, and and to people that live that experience, even if they have never read Fanon,
Hmm.
sometimes they understand Fanon much better than some PhD students that have studied Fanon for many years just in
Absolutely.
theory, you know. So that's why I'm talking about the US, but I would link it to, I would say, most of the global north universities, the Q&A, the experience I had was very interesting, but it wasn't the same as the one I had in the Global South. And
Mm-hmm.
by this, I'm talking about the Q&A we had in, I've had in Bamako, in Mali, for example, the one I've had even in Algeria, in Algiers. I had a Q&A that was extraordinary also, you know. So I
Yeah.
think the question of praxis also by the student being in a university is not the same when you live in a place where you just switch off the light in the morning, it works. You open the water tap, everything works perfectly. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have some other realities in other places. And
Mhm.
this is part of, it talks about funnel, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, I want to ask you the same question, but for Algeria and then for France. So, was there pride in your film within a kind of Algerian? I'm not talking, of course, about the intellectuals or the university. Just in general, like here's an Algerian reviving this particular figure, locating Fanon within the Algerian context. How did you experience Algeria through this film? And then, of course, I want to know how the film did in France.
Mm. So first, I want to say that in the movie, especially in the second part talking about the present, I didn't want to give more time to Algeria than I gave to other places.
Mhm.
I wanted to have Algeria to inscribe itself among other people's other countries. And
Mhm.
by that, to me, it was a way also to respect Fanon's internationalism and
Absolutely.
to give a balance between everyone and not to have, because we talk about Fanon, so we need to talk more about Algeria or more about Martinique.
Mhm.
And the thing is, as the internationalism, the Pan Africanism that is part of Fanon's internationalism, uh, made that Algeria was, to me, needed to be part of the other places. I'm saying
Mhm.
that because uh, when I was in the university in Algiers, and it was interesting because it was like around 300 students being in
Wow.
the room, and it was mostly female students. And I was very glad because at first I said, "Oh, with the language," because the film was in French and English with subtitles, you know, and I didn't have any Arabic subtitles. And I
Mm.
said, wow, maybe it might be difficult. And after that, I realized when came the Q&A that most of the students stayed during the whole Q&A.
Okay.
And one of the girls said, what we're happy about your movie is that we saw that Fanon as an Algerian has such an interest in all the world.
Huh.
And Algeria being part of that, we feel we are part of the world.
Mm.
And when she said that, it was due to the fact that also, you know, after the civil war that took place in the 90s in Algeria, for many years, you know, people felt a bit isolated.
Mhm.
And finding that all those questions brought by Fanon in the past during the colonial time and being brought today in, I would say, neo-colonial time, made
Mm.
that the issues that people are facing in Algeria, just realizing that in many places people do face those kind of situation also. So it was a way to say that we don't feel alone in that, and we feel that we are part of the world,
Beautiful.
even in the positive things, but also in some of the negative things, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so to
Beautiful.
me that was a very interesting
Yeah.
experience I had in university in Algeria. And it is a bit difficult to talk about Fanon today in Algeria because I think Fanon was studied a lot in Algeria until the 80s,
Yeah.
maybe I would say the late 80s. And after that, it became a bit more difficult to talk about Fanon because the reality of the country
Mhm.
and what Fanon's been writing, all the analysis he's had about, you know, the national bourgeoisie and everything became much more evident than
Yeah.
what it was until the 80s, you know.
Mm.
So I think today Fanon in Algeria is more like an icon of the revolution. What it is actually is a martyr of the revolution. We like to talk about the aesthetic of Fanon, but to go fully in the political content of final thought is more difficult for politics today to accept it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but we still have, I mean, Fanon people. I think people that are in their until their 40s, they all know Fanon very well. Among
Yeah.
the youth,
Hmm.
a lot of you think, oh, they know he's a martyr of the revolution. Sometimes some people, some youth might think that, oh, yeah, he was a French that helped the revolution, but without knowing exactly the thing, because there is a kind of, artistic blur
Yeah.
around Fanon, and there might be a will to
Yeah.
maintain this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds right. And I think in France, and I think, I don't know if I'm wrong when I say this, you didn't have like an official distributor. I don't think it went into movie theaters and things like that, or did it?
No, it did actually. It went in some movie theater with my own distribution. I mean, at
Okay.
the level I could afford it,
Mm.
and it got a bit difficult because at the moment I had a chance maybe to have a distributor. Just came the
Ah, okay.
COVID-19 arrived and everything was closed.
I
And
see.
after a year, when there was a chance to distribute a movie at the moment, there were so many movies waiting to be distributed that I couldn't compete at the moment. To
Okay.
find a way to go to into the distributing system.
Hmm.
So, as a small movie with independent cinemas, it's much more difficult in normal times. So, in a moment like this one, it was even more difficult.
Sure.
So finally, um, I mean, it went through,
Yeah. I mean, I
some,
know it played at festivals and things
some
like that.
festivals and some even some activist
Sure.
training organization that called me even in South Africa and United States in some places asking me if they could screen my movie for like a political education in
Hmm.
some African film festival, in some film festivals, in
Yeah.
some universities in different places. And even in France, I would say in France, it's not the place where I've screened a lot, neither.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Sure, sure. And I know actually this year there are a bunch of things that will happen with your film as well because of the 100 years. So that's good. What do you think? There is so much written about Fanon. I mean, there are lots of biographies. Uh, you know each one making one point over the other, all useful in its own way. And there are some films that came before yours as well. I'm thinking about Isaac Julian and some others. I just wanted to know, in your mind, what do you think was different about the documentary that you made? I have a million theories. I already wrote about your film when I after I watched it. But what in your mind did you do that was different? Not just in the film sense, just in general. If you think about a text about Fanon.
I think I don't know. Maybe what made this documentary different. I
Hmm.
think it's one of the reasons is because it's bringing Fanon in the present.
Sure.
It's not Fanon as a museum. It's not an hagiography of Fanon.
Hmm.
Just doing some. I mean, the way I wanted to make this movie is not to have fetishism about Fanon. I mean, to me, I
Yeah.
think Fanon was not a superhero.
Yeah.
To me, Fanon became Fanon because of the French colonial system,
Hmm.
because he was someone like many of us that was very skilled, that managed to find a way to emancipate himself from mental slavery, to use Bob Marley's words.
Yeah.
And I make the link also with Bob Marley a lot, and they both
Yeah.
died at 36. And they both talk about the question of violence. When that song that I've used in the movie,
Yes, are
War
true.
from Bob Marley, is
Yeah.
talking about this concept of self-defense against violence that Fanon is talking about. And
Hmm.
and I think that Fanon, as a French citizen, living under a colonial system, you know, was himself alienated because I think he was very naive, like many of us. Uh, Being born in France and believing in all the French myth of liberty, equality, fraternity, and blah, 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 blah. And with time, you just realize that this is a lie.
Mm.
And so, in your daily practice, when you see those, things happening and being wrong and being like, I would say, being swindled by a system and
Mhm.
doing wrong to your people, you just think that you need to find solution about this and to get liberated. And this
Yeah.
is what happened to Fanon. And Fanon, what I find very interesting about him is like all his life, at all his life, at any stage of his life, there is a point of rupture with the colonial system. And
Mhm.
every time, I would say, when he leaves, actually, the first time when he's leaving the island, when he's not even 18, because he saw the French collaborating with the Nazi, and he's got all his principles, and he cannot accept it. And then
Mm.
after that, he goes to the army, he goes to fight against the Nazism, and he's facing racism from the French military as someone that is going to fight against racism. And I think this is a point of rupture. And then being as a soldier in France and realizing that French people do collaborate and they don't even care about who is in power, who is in charge, whether the German and French, as long as their own private interest is being protected. That's what he said in the letter to his parents. He
Yeah.
said, I was wrong. This is not my fight, my struggle. And from that moment, when he goes back to Martinique after the war, when he goes back to
Yeah.
his school and doing his baccalaureate, where he sees again Aimé Césaire, where actually this is a myth that Césaire was his teacher. Césaire has never been his teacher, actually. He
Mhm.
was teaching in the school, the high school where Fanon was. There was a few classes sometime where Aimé Césaire was teaching to all the students from different classes, like other teachers would do. But
Yeah.
Césaire has never been. There is like a kind of romanticism,
Romanticizing.
yeah, romanticizing the fact that Aimé Césaire would have been the teacher of Fanon. It's very nice to say that. And then the rupture he has when he
I
goes,
like that story.
yeah, but
You're killing me here, but go on.
no, but the thing that when he goes back to Martinique, he's looking at Martinique with different eyes because when he's been
Yes.
through the war, he looks at the question of the hierarchy and the question of racism and the question of the hierarchy in Martinican society. And this
Mhm.
is how he gets all the material to write Black Skin, White Mask.
Yeah.
So this is also a point of rupture. And Black Skin, White Mask, when he writes it, he faces again the censorship of the university and the French academia that
Mhm.
finds too dangerous to have those kind of writing in the context of the time. And
Mm.
then the encounter with Algeria uh, is another point of rupture. And then the War of Independence. And then, so that's why I'm saying all this short life has
Yeah.
been succeeded with points of rupture with the colonial system until he dies, actually. And that's what I find very interesting about Fanon. That's what I'm saying. He's not a superhero. He's someone that was honest with himself.
Mhm.
And when he was, and that's why he has chosen the South. When he
Mhm.
was in Algeria, he could have gone through the Algerian Communist Party that was in Algeria. No, he has chosen to go with the Algerian Liberation Front. And he wanted to, as I as I like to say very often, yeah, as someone coming from the Caribbean with the heritage of the history of slavery and colonialism, he he did the return to Africa through the Algerian door. And
Mm.
when he arrived, he found a people being like doing a kind of doing a marronage against French colonialism, and himself with his own trajectory, he came and in an organic way, he just joined the Algerian Revolution without wondering if he was joining or not, And he found all through the Algerian revolution, he found all the praxis he wanted to have through all his thoughts and all the theory he has developed before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. uh yes, you the film really does bring all this theoretical trajectory along with the life trajectory perfectly together. Of course, for me, I had been studying or whatever Fanon during my PhD and things like that, encountering his works also by way of Palestine, post 9/11, by way of Algeria and things like that. I would say from 2004, 2005, but then it was in your documentary that I first kind of was astonished and happily surprised to see something about Josie Fanon and to see the interview with his son Olivier Fanon, and to come to your theme of love, to kind of think about the idea of this revolutionary couple, doing things together, really with the Algerian Revolution bringing them together. So in a way, you bring so much of that alive, and as part of this month of celebration and honoring Fanon, I've also talked to Olivier Fanon, who you put me in contact with, and it's really sort of, I think, your film is doing all these things, but I think it's very exciting how much it's bringing his social and familial world alive as well. So I think that's a very beautiful thing. And I can't let you go without asking you about the new Fanon revival happening in, in France in particular. Today we have two new films about him, and I know you talked about aesthetics of Fanon and romanticizing Fanon, and I have seen on social media a doctor kit, like a toy that's like a Fanon, like doll that's a doctor, and a stethoscope and it's like there's a Fanon doll, there's Fanon t-shirt, Fanon, all this stuff is going on. And amidst all that, because of these films, there's a film by Jean-Claude Barny called Fanon, and there's a film by Abdi Noor Zaza, which has a very, very long title. I'm also just going to call it Fanon, but in Blida, his years in Blida. And because of these two films, I think there's been so much revival, conversation, podcast, all this kind of thing. And I was actually interviewing Olivier Fanon, and I was telling him that I just saw a copy of Peau Noire Masque Blanc in Fnac, the electronic store in Paris. So it's like something is happening, like Fanon is around. Why do you think, why now, what has happened suddenly? How did it come together like this, or do you think it will change anything, whatever you feel like about this topic?
Well, I think there is several reasons. So I think one of them is this year is the centenary of his birth. So he
Sure.
was born the 20th July 1925. So it is very important to mark such a date, such a moment. Same time, I think, unfortunately, this is what is happening in the world, the way that things are going on, that makes Fanon very important. Because, as I said, the analysis of Fanon are the most important things we need to remind, to retain, and on a global uh, basis today, when we see how the world goes, we understand how Fanon's work is very important because he has understood the risk, the danger that things that would happen if we are not being careful about how to maintain the new independencies,
Yeah.
you know, and this, and I think the question of I just want to talk not only about Palestine, but I would say what is happening today in Sudan, like in Congo, like in Haiti, like in different places, in the world, and of course in Palestine, because we talk a lot
Yeah.
about Palestine also. Um, when we read Fanon, we find keys to understand what is going on, and very clearly, of course, unless we update the situations. So I think this is why Fanon is very important, and people have an interest in Fanon because he's talking about the mechanism of colonialism, of neo-colonialism. So I would say that the question of Palestine is might be maybe a little bit different, and that might
Sure.
be the reason I've used it in my documentary also, maybe to close the documentary. Is that I said the question of Palestine is very important because we have a typical 19th century type of European colonialism taking place, I
Hmm.
would say, with 21st century technologies, which
Sure.
is maybe the difference with other situations that are more linked to neo-colonialism and the way that the imperialism is functioning with people that are supposed to be foreign, sovereign, but we are not.
I mean, Fanon predicted all this. That's what,
Exactly,
you know.
exactly. So that's why I think Fanon, reading it is very important to, as I said before, not to do fetishism about Fanon. Fanon gives us keys to think and to understand among other thinkers. Today, I think to understand maybe the importance of unity in Africa, it's very
Mhm.
important to maybe to read Kwame Nkrumah, to read some people like Walter Rodney or others to understand actually and to cross the thought of those different intellectuals that actually had more or less the same aim in matter of liberation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's like a toolkit that we have that is
Mhm.
important to understand the world and not to use it like just this is not a Bible that you need to apply like
Of
Orthodox
course.
uh, way. So I think that's why Fanon is important. And I
That's
mean,
why there's a revival, you think?
I
Something.
think the revival is linked to that, to the centenary, and maybe it's also an opportunity for some film directors to use the centenary to make a movie, maybe. And
Sure.
why not? This is also maybe a commercial strategy. And as long as it makes Fanon being known, whether the movie is good or not,
Hmm.
as long as people find an interest in Fanon and read Fanon and understand it by themselves without falling in the trap in which we should be very careful not to have Fanon being Che Guevaraized. By that, I mean not to become just an icon on a t shirt and being totally emptied from his political content. It is very important that we are like, I would say, guards to make
Yeah.
sure that Fanon is not being used today. And we just talk about Fanon to just keep an aesthetic and say, oh, it's cool to have a Fanon t shirt without knowing really who is Fanon and to be scared of being radical. Fanon is radical. We need to be radical
I
because
think
colonialism
you're
is extreme radicalism,
yeah.
and we need to apply the radicalism of love, or maybe using that notion of revolutionary love that Huria Boutelja is talking
Sure.
in her
In your
book,
film.
and that is explained in the documentary also.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I take your words, but I also am seeing it as a warning. I think the ship has sailed, as one will say. I
Hmm.
do think some of the aesthetization, fetishization has begun. And I think there is something natural in that happening as well. And as someone who, will teach, say, 100 students per year, say I have, I teach whatever amount of classes, there's always going to be the 100 for whom some ideas are for the t-shirt, but there'll be five for whom it will be real. So I think when I say that I see him in a chain store magazine, when I see Fanon's book in a chain store, I think some of this has already, or see the doctor kit, some of this is happening. But let's hope that um, some people, some of it will get de-radicalized, but some of it will remain and also radicalized. So it's the only way the world unfortunately works,
And
sadly.
I would say, I think one of the achievements I have every time, I mean, I feel I made that movie for a reason,
Hmm.
that every time I have a screening, and if I have just one young person coming to me and telling me, oh, I didn't know him, and I really want to read his books because I want to know
Sure.
more about him. I just feel like I didn't make that movie for no reasons.
Yeah.
And I was quite glad to receive a couple of time receiving an email, no, coming from United States, from university teachers telling me that I've been teaching Fanon for many years. And since I've screened your movie to my students, I've never had such good essays about Fanon because they read it differently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think this is the purpose of this movie. And to be honest, that wasn't a movie to make money. I'm glad
Yeah.
every time. I mean, I know that people understand Fanon and is being useful in their own life and
Yeah.
in their own, I would say, psychological balance to be able to grow up and to live. I would say, I don't know if I can use the word normally, but to have like a good perspective in life,
Sure.
for struggle and to see the future with a different perspective. To me, is like mission accomplished. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Hassan. There's a lot you have given us to think, and I will share the link of your movie when I publish this. So I hope many, many people will watch, and I hope you're making people pay to watch your film because you don't have to become rich, but you should be compensated for the labor of bringing this beautiful, beautiful film to life, this beautiful man and his ideas. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.